I'm here in this video to talk all about my trip to Europe for a month. Yay! Let me just say it was a fabulous trip, and I am so happy that you all joined me and enjoyed the pictures and chimed in. So thank you so much. And I wanted to answer those questions that I got the most. And I said, you know, why not put it in a video? People can refer to it. And you can always drop me a line, leave your comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. So the first question I was asked is, why did you select those cities and countries to travel? What was your thought process behind your selection? The second question was, did you use a travel agency? How did you organize and plan your trip? And 3, whoa, solo, you travel solo. How is traveling solo as a woman? So I want to address those 3 questions. And I'll start first with the question in terms of how did I select those cities to travel? Well, I'll start with the decision to travel for a month. So what happened is a couple of years ago, I said, you know what? I write things down that I want to do or achieve. And it could be anything, a festival I want to go to, I write it down. So I wrote down, that I wanted to travel Europe for a month. Now, when I write these things down, I don't plan a time frame. I just let it manifest. It just in due time. When I do it, I do it. And what happens is when I put it out there and put that down, it just, opportunities open where I can do certain things. And I'm like, it could be 10 years later, and I'm like, wow, I wrote that down that I wanted to do that. Now it's happening. So I wrote that down actually 2 years ago. So, that's there. And in terms of Prague, that was on the list. I wrote Prague. I wanted to visit Prague 12 years ago. I wrote it down. And I had a picture. I had gotten a picture. This photographer travels all around the world, and I had bought a picture of Prague. Well, now I know what it is that I'm looking at. I mean, in terms of I can relate. Oh my God, I was there. It's a beautiful picture of the Charles Bridge and the scenery around it. And that is what sparked my interest in Prague. And that I said, you know what, writing it down. I'm going to visit Prague, Czech Republic. And I've been saying that for the longest. So at that time, this is about 12 years ago, I asked my cousin Chris, my road dog, Chris, say peace, Chris, that Chris. We do annual trips together. And I asked him 12 years ago, I said, you going with, I didn't necessarily ask, I just said, you going with me to Prague? It was a question, but it really wasn't. So he said, yeah, I'll go. And I was like, okay. We didn't put a time frame on it. It just was, when it happened, it happens. And what's so interesting about that, he had the opportunity to go last year, and he was like, no, dog, we got to pick another place, because if I go without her, it's going to be some drama. And he right about that. If he had gone without me, oh yeah, it would have been a price to pay. But so anyway, so we had that on the list. And so last year we went to our annual trip was, and we do annual trips whether it's in the States or international. So last year we went to Barcelona, and we went to Lisboa. And during that trip we had decided that May would be a good year for our next trip. So that would be May 2018. And May is a good time because I don't want to go from winter to winter. I'm not traveling in the wintertime like that. I'm not going from cold to cold for a vacation. So then I said, and especially not for a month. And then also I took into consideration I wanted a time in which it was not too hot, because in Europe, air conditioning is not always guaranteed, and depending on where I'm going, I want to stay in an apartment. Like for example, Paris, I just love to stay in apartments in Paris. So I knew that, okay, if I go in the summertime, I require air, because honey, with this heat, itching, these bumps and this eczema don't mix well together at all. So I have to have air. And I said, well, that limits in terms of my accommodation. Because I went, let me fast forward. I went to, last year, I went to Paris for my birthday in August for about 2 weeks. And I did Paris, Amsterdam, and Brussels. And so when I was there, Chris and I, our trip was in March. So we had already decided that May was the time frame. And so when I did the trip in August last year, I said, you know what? It's time. And I had a fabulous time. Oh my God. I went for my birthday and it was the best. I just had a fantastic time. And so when I said, you know what, I did 2 weeks, it's time for me to do my month in Europe. So I decided that May 2018, that would be the time frame. It was I was doing it, so that was a given. And then I said, you know what, and I told Chris, I said, you know what, I guess it's time for us to do Prague. I guess it's finally time for us to do Prague. And so knowing that we were going to do Prague, I said, okay, let's look at the map, what's around Prague, because I knew Budapest was in that region, and I've only heard great things about Budapest. And I only heard one person say that it wasn't their cup of tea, and that's fine. But overall, I heard very good things about it. And I always do my own research. So I do my own research and figure out, what do they have to do? What would I like to do there? And it just seemed like the thermal baths sold me anyway. I was sold when I heard about the thermal baths. So I said, okay, we can do Budapest. I said, oh, and Slovakia, Bratislava, Slovakia, that would be a nice place to visit, even if it's a day trip. And that's what we end up doing. I didn't have to stay there. A day trip was perfect. And then Prague, and also in that region right there is Vienna. And I said, oh, but in terms of the Vienna, I said, and I put Vienna, in terms, Chris came out for 10 days. He could do 10 days. And I said, you know what? He should come on the front end of my trip. And then from there, I can just, roll on. And so I said, if we can do Vienna, that's fine. But I may have to do Vienna solo, Austria. And what happened was, I enjoyed Budapest so much, I didn't even do Vienna. I said, I'd do that another time. But, okay, so that was that region. So it was going to be Budapest, Bratislava, Prague, and those were the countries I would do with Chris. And I said, okay, now what am I going to do when he leaves? Where am I headed to next? And I had thrown out some countries, and let me say that you all remember Brenda Nosy Travels, Europe is her playground. Remember I went to Paris in 2016. Some of you may not know. I went to Paris in 2016 to run the Paris Marathon, and Brenda coordinated the trip for the Paris Marathon, and it was fabulous, honey, fantastic. Oh, she set it up she spoiled me when it comes to Paris. I am so spoiled. I require, where's my apartment? It's funny because, I'm spoiled in Paris. So when she coordinated that. So my logistic for anything Europe is I use my travel consultant Brenda for those to logistically work things out, and there are some things that I don't have the expertise or the knowledge, and I have no problem deferring to an expert and using those services and logistically working it out because I don't have to have a set itinerary. I'm really not that type of person. I like to flow. So I don't have to have a set itinerary. I just logistically want the trip to be sound and efficient, and that makes it more cost effective. And so I can just go boom, 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 bada boom. And then when I get there, I just roll and do what I need. Or if I want to take some time and just, like you say, go to Vienna, if I decide, I can roll to Vienna, or I can go to another country if I decide. But the core I wanted logistically had to map out. So when we were talking, and I'll talk more about that in the second question, but when we were talking, we threw out some cities, some countries, and then I was like, we were like, and then she said, what about Rome? And I said, Rome? Rome is on my list, but Rome wasn't at the top of my list. And I was not in a rush to do Rome, because here's the thing with Rome. When I did my research on Rome, and just basically in talking with people, Rome, I heard people love Rome or they hate Rome. I couldn't really gauge Rome. I couldn't figure it out. And I said, you know what? Rome will be one of those cities in which I just have to go for myself and judge, because I can't make a decision in terms of based on what you all are saying. So it wasn't like Budapest where it was like, yeah, girl, you need to go. I knew for a fact, yes, Budapest. But Rome, I'm like, I just go for myself and see for myself. But I didn't have any expectation, any high expectation. I didn't have any expectations of Rome because I just didn't know. So I said, you know what? When I looked at the logistics of it, and then I started doing research into Rome, I was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Okay, let me add Rome, because I can do a cooking class, I can see the Vatican, I can see the Colosseum, and those things I did want to see, even though they turned out to be like, oh God, that Vatican, oh my God, 3 hours, whoo, child, I get on that later, but so, and then the Colosseum, oh God, oh, that hard concrete, anyway, but they were nice, but I did want to see those things. So I said, Rome, okay, I can do Rome. So Rome was on the list, and since I was in Rome, I said, well, let's split up Rome. Where else can I go in Italy? So I called on my Mrs. Italian extraordinaire, Anita P., who knows all things Italy, and I asked her what would she recommend, what city she would recommend in Italy, since I was doing Rome. And she loved Florence and Tuscany, and she knows me well, so she said, I think you will really enjoy Florence. And I said, okay, and I trust her, and I know with her style, I know, I said, Florence must be the place. So I said, okay. And I looked into Florence, and I was like, oh, I got really excited about Florence. It was just something about it. The beauty, it seems just majestic, and it just seemed calmer than Rome. And I was like, okay. And then I said I could plan a day trip from Florence and see different parts of Italy. That sounds nice. So I got really excited about Florence, and I was like, okay. And then I had already planned it. I mean, it was a given. My trip would end in Paris. That was just a given. So my trip will always, if I go to Europe, my trip will always, Paris will always be a part of that trip. And I'll say that because, again, 2016 was when I first went to Paris to run the Paris Marathon. And Brenda coordinated that trip, and it was fantastic. And before I went to Paris in 2016, I formally started learning the language, French. And I really fell in love with learning the language. And so I was like, oh, I get to practice my language skills, and it became a part of, I'm still in classes for French because I'm going to continue to learn the language. So it's like an annual trip for me to go to Paris or some part of France. I always come back to Paris, but to go to France and immerse and just practice my language skills. So that I knew I would end in Paris. So, so that is really how I made the selection of cities. And also, I want to say this: Central and Eastern Europe, I knew the value of my dollar would be long. You know, you want long money, and I'm going for a month. So I was like, I knew that in these places, the value of my dollar would be strong, and I could do more. And Rome and Paris is the euro, and we call it the euro. But I knew there's nothing like Budapest and Prague and Bratislava. Bratislava got a high tax though, 20%. But you know, that had made me curse. It was so 20% in tax on the food tax. That's ridiculous. But anyway, so I wanted to get the most for my money, and that was a good balance because I knew when I started using the euro, you're like, oh. It just boom. And then over in Budapest, I'm like, hey, what you want? Popping bottles. What you want? You got, okay, what you want? Okay, give me that. You know, so it was just, it balanced. So when you thinking of travel, think of how far the value of your dollar, how far your money would go. And so that's why it balanced out really well. And so that was my selection process for the cities and why I chose those cities and countries. And it was perfect. I spent the right amount of time in each city, and you know, I'm still, you know, in awe of that experience because it was fantastic. That was my selection process. Stay tuned to learn how I planned my trip to Europe and life as a solo traveler.